The forest receives him the way forests receive everything, without ceremony. He parks the truck at the tree line, sits for a moment with the engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal and the first layer of what lies beyond. Wind in high oak, a crow somewhere distant. The particular silence of a place that has not heard a machine in a long time. Then he opens the door and steps out.
All right.
The ground is soft
Time to get to work.
underfoot. Last autumn's leaves, half dissolved into the clay, compress beneath his boots without sound. He carries nothing yet. He walks in. The clearing appears gradually. The oaks thin, the sky widens, and then there it is. Not a ruin in the usual sense.
It's a miracle it ever got this
There are no
far.
collapsed walls, no arches brought down by frost and neglect. What he finds instead is a beginning. The foundations have been laid. The first courses of limestone rise perhaps 1.5 meters from the clay, tracing the outline of what was intended to become a castle. Towers at the corners, a great hall running east to west, a gatehouse facing the track that was cleared but never finished. The stones are cut. The scaffolding poles, wooden ones, are still lashed in place with rope that has turned gray and brittle.
The perimeter is
Someone
intact.
built this far
The towers could
and then
hold,
stopped.
but the main
He
hall
stands
is
at the edge of
compromised.
the clearing and looks at all of it for a long time. Then he crouches down beside the nearest foundation course and runs his thumb along the joint. The mortar is lime, old style, slow set, mixed hot from the burning of the stone itself. He taps it
I
with his
found what I
knuckle.
need.
Solid. They
It's
knew
time
what
to
they were
begin.
doing, whoever they were. He nods once,
Level
almost
4, section
imperceptibly,
alpha.
and stands.
Checking the vertical plumb here.
He walks
Needs
the full
repointing.
perimeter, counterclockwise.
Good, moving to beta.
Always counterclockwise.
All right, thick enough.
An old habit no one ever explained to him, and that he has never tried to explain.
Checking true.
He pauses
Look
at
at this.
each tower
The
base,
first course is
measures
shifted.
the thickness of the walls with his spread
3
hands,
blocks displaced
checks
outward.
The, alignment of
The
courses
misalignment
with a
is clear.
Right
At the
there.
south tower, a
It's
section
shifted.
of the first course has shifted laterally, the clay beneath
That.
it having swelled with water and
The displacement is approximately
crouches
2
again,
centimeters.
presses.
I'll need
The
to double
stones
check
do
the
not
load-bearing
move under his
calculations.
hand, but they are not where they should be. He notes it the way a doctor notes something in an examination, without alarm, with attention. At the
Amazing.
gatehouse, he finds the
This is
original
it.
plan scratched into a
This
flat
is it.
piece of limestone,
The master
propped
plan.
against the inner face of the wall. Someone drew it there with a nail or a chisel point, a bird's eye outline of the entire structure, with measurements in what appears to be a medieval unit he recognizes, the perch, just over 5 meters. He
All right,
looks at
easy
the
does
drawing
it.
for a long time. His finger
Just right here,
traces the
careful.
lines
Perfect,
without
take a look at
touching
that.
them. He sets the stone carefully upright against the wall where it was found. He goes back to the truck and begins unloading.
This one's
The
too
first
old.
week is preparation. He does not touch
Let's
the
try
walls.
that one over there.
He
Yep,
spends
this looks
3
fresh.
days alone in the forest, moving
tree
among
rings
the oaks
show a
with a
long
mallet
life.
and a set of iron
Yes,
wedges,
yes, the heartwood
selecting
is
fallen
strong.
trees, not the
true
dead
piece
ones,
of forest
which are too
history.
dry and brittle, but the freshly fallen, the green oak that still smells of sap when you strike it. He drags the trunks to the
The oak
clearing
is
by
good.
hand
We'll start
a
with
rope
these 6
over
for the
one
beams.
shoulder,
Agreed.
leaning into the
Let's
weight
mark them.
the way men lean into wind. By the 4th morning, there is a rough timber yard at the edge of the site. 6 logs of varying diameter, stripped of their bark with a draw knife.
All right,
that
that's the
whispers
5th one
against
in.
the wood in
Looking
long,
solid.
curling shaves.
We should be able to start on the roof
He builds
beams
his
next.
shelter first, a lean-to against the south wall, where the limestone holds warmth from the afternoon sun. Timber uprights mortised into a sill he has notched into the existing foundation. A roof of overlapping oak shakes split with a froe and a mallet, each one struck into alignment with a sound like a flat
All
hand
right.
on a tabletop.
That should do it.
By the end of the first week,
Looks solid.
the shelter stands. He lays his bedroll inside, boils water on a small iron stove, and sits at the entrance in the last light, watching the clearing. The clearing is triangular. 3 tall oaks remain at its edges, the ones the original builders left as landmarks or shelter, or both. In the evening, the shadow of the westernmost oak crosses the south tower precisely, and he has noticed this, the way the shadow touches the tower
moves
face
with
at the
intent.
same moment each clear evening, which means the original builders oriented the south tower deliberately to catch that shadow, which means they knew this tree, which means the tree was already old when they began. He sits with this for a while. The iron stove ticks. An owl calls from somewhere in the tree line. The lime kiln comes next. He builds it over 2 days at the northern edge of the clearing, away from the timber yard and the shelter. A circular structure
Yes, that's
of
right.
fieldstone,
Solid
dry-laid,
and
about
true.
1.5 meters in diameter and the same in height. Not beautiful, but correct. Inside, he stacks alternate layers of limestone fragments collected from around the area and wood
Fire's
split
taking.
into billets. He fires it in the early morning. The fire takes
Looks good.
immediately, running
Draw
through the dry
starting.
splits with a sound like paper tearing, and then deepening into a steady roar as the kiln reaches temperature. He tends it all day,
The center is perfect,
feeding
just
splits
past
through the
white
opening
hot.
at the base,
The rim is
checking
holding
the
at a
color
pale
of the
orange.
flame.
We're
It
right
should
on
be
target
white
for
hot
level
at the
2.
center, pale
All right,
orange
you're
at
set
the
for the
rim.
night.
By
Good work.
evening, the draw is perfect.
Just need some
and
rest
he
now.
leaves it to run through the night. In the morning,
All right, let's
the
see how
kiln
it held
is
up.
still warm when he opens it. The limestone
Perfect.
fragments have
Exactly what we
transformed,
need.
white,
That's a good
chalky,
burn.
crumbling
Careful,
at the
careful.
edges
Hot
where he
material
touches it
this
with a
morning.
stick.
Good,
Quicklime.
now back for more.
He transfers it carefully into a wooden box lined with clay, adds water from the stream with a ladle, and stands back. The reaction is immediate. The box steams.
The ratio must be
material
just right.
hisses and expands. The smell of something
Slowly.
ancient and mineral fills the clearing.
Steady now.
He does not hurry this. He adds water in small measures over the course of an hour, working it with a long wooden paddle until the material reaches the consistency of thick cream. He covers it and leaves it to slake for 3 days. Properly slaked
Level
lime
4.
improves with time.
Those stones have
He has
shifted even
months.
more.
He can wait.
This needs immediate
While
attention.
the lime slakes, he turns to the south tower.
4
problem.
centimeters.
The shifted course is 3 stones wide.
That's the clay
3 large
swelling
blocks
beneath.
of dressed limestone.
The settlement
that have
here
moved
is
outward
extensive.
By perhaps 4
This
centimeters,
base course has
enough
shifted
to compromise
significantly.
The alignment
We
of
need to
every
brace
course above
the
them.
south tower.
He examines the situation from every angle. Then he goes to the timber yard and selects a length of oak roughly as big around as his forearm. He sharpens one end to a rough wedge shape with a hatchet. This will be his lever. The technique
Almost
is
there.
old. He digs behind the displaced stones with a narrow
There it
iron
is.
bar, clearing the clay
The original
until
bedding
he can see
surface.
the original bedding
All
surface.
right, this is it.
He drives
Steady,
the oak
careful now.
wedge into the gap with a wooden mallet. Each blow a clean, dense
One more solid
percussion
blow
that
should do
carries
it.
across the
All right,
clearing and
this has
returns
to
from
move.
the tree line a
Adjusting the
half-second
angle.
later as a soft echo.
Push. Harder. Come
When
on.
the wedge
just
is
a little.
set, he applies the long lever
it moving.
against it and pushes. Nothing. He repositions.
Just a
pushes
little
again
further.
with his whole weight.
Almost
knees
there.
bent, back straight.
pushing.
The lever extension of his arms and his arms extension of his will.
1 more centimeter.
The stones shift. A
Got
small
it.
sound, a deep,
Still a good
low
few inches
grinding
out.
stone on
We'll need a
compressed
stronger
clay,
lever.
and they move perhaps a centimeter. He stops, checks with his eye, repositions, pushes again. It takes most of a morning. When the 3 stones are back in correct alignment, he packs the bedding joint with fresh clay tamped in with the blade of the iron bar and beds the stones back down with careful mallet blows. He checks with a long, straight edge cut from one of his oak planks. The surface is true. He straightens
The
up and rolls
consistency
his
is good.
shoulders
Ready
once,
for the first coat.
slowly.
I'll cover it back
Then
up now.
he picks up his
Good
trowel
work.
and goes to check the lime. The mortar he mixes on a flat stone beside the kiln. Lime putty, coarse sand from the stream bank, and water worked together with a wooden board until it reaches the texture of cold cream, holding its shape when he lifts the trowel load, but relaxing slowly at the edges. He has mixed mortar 10,000 times. His hands know the ratio without measuring. The repointing of the first 5 courses takes 2 weeks. He works from the bottom up, raking out the weathered joints with a narrow iron tool that produces a dry, sandy sound, like a comb drawn through rough hair. Then pressing fresh mortar into the void with his thumb and a shaped stick he has whittled to match the width of the joint. Each joint is finished with a slightly recessed profile, the same profile visible in the original work still intact on the inner faces of the walls. He is not imposing his preference. He is reading theirs.
After all these months.
By the end of the
It's
second
done.
week, the lower walls
Look at that,
look
solid.
different. Not new.
Impressive
the
work.
stone is still
Really good.
centuries colored, stained with lichen and time, but solid in a way they were not before. He steps back each evening and looks at what the day produced. He does not seem satisfied exactly. He seems still, which in him is the same thing. The rising work begins in the 3rd week. He quarries from an exposure of limestone
fracture is
he
where we'll
found
start.
half a kilometer into the forest, a natural face where the rock emerges from the hillside in horizontal beds, already partially separated by frost action. He reads the fracture lines by eye,
Just a little more.
drives iron wedges into the natural cracks with a mallet, and levers the blocks
Got
free.
it.
Each block comes away from the face with a sound like a book being closed firmly, a soft, conclusive thud, followed by silence. He shapes them on site with a lump hammer and a bolster chisel, the chisel producing a sharp, ringing note each time it strikes.
All right,
a
easy
sound
does it.
that carries through the trees and returns changed, softened by the time it reaches the clearing.
Heavy thing.
The blocks are heavy. He moves them on a low wooden sledge with wooden rollers, cut from straight-grained sections of the smaller oak trunks, changing
Walls
the rollers
rising.
from back to front as the
4th
sledge
and 5th
advances,
weeks.
a meter per minute on flat ground.
We're getting
He does
there.
not hurry. The
All right, bring it up
walls
slowly.
rise through the 4th and 5th weeks. He works from a scaffolding of his own construction, horizontal
Just a bit
poles
more.
of green oak lashed to the wall face with rope, supporting a plank walkway he adjusts upward as the courses climb. The work is rhythmic. Set the stone, check the level, bed it in mortar, check again. Tap into final position with the mallet, joint with the shaped stick, move to the next. The sound of the site changes as the walls gain height. The mallet blows now echo off stone on 2 sides, the clearing becoming more enclosed, the acoustics shifting from open to resonant. In the 6th week, the weather arrives. It comes from the west, the way weather always comes from the west in this part of Burgundy. A low pressure building over 3 days, the light going flat and yellow, the oaks beginning to move. On the morning it breaks, he is
Keep it
already
tight.
covering his unset mortar joints with
Not a drop,
dampened
not a
sacking
drop.
and lashing timber boards over the open top courses
Almost done.
from preventing rain from
All right,
washing
that's the
the
last
fresh
one.
lime before it is set. He works quickly
Coming down
and
hard
without
now,
panic,
time to go.
his hands moving through a familiar
Safe now.
sequence. By the time the first heavy drops reach the clearing, everything is covered. He retreats to the shelter and makes tea. The rain runs for 4 days. He uses the time. He works on the timber elements, shaping the oak beams for the great hall roof by eye and by hand. First with a broad axe that removes the bulk of the roundness from each log in long sweeping strokes, then with an adze that dresses the surface to a faceted smoothness. The broad axe makes a heavy, satisfying sound as it bites into the green wood, each stroke releasing a smell of sap and bark that fills the shelter. The adze is finer, a lighter, rhythmic tapping, the shavings curling away thin as paper. He sits on the log and works towards himself, the adze swinging in a controlled arc, his body relaxed with the accumulated habit of the motion.
On the 2nd day of rain, he
Keep it true.
sharpens every tool he
axe.
has. It takes most of the afternoon.
Needs a good
he works
edge.
through the chisels first, then the iron bars, then the broad axe and the adze, then the draw knife. The sound of steel on a wet whetstone is a fine, high whisper, sustained and regular. Outside, the rain on the shelter roof is a continuous low percussion. He works through both sounds without noticing either. On the 4th day, the rain stops. The clearing is changed, every stone surface wet and darkened, the clay ground between the walls holding water in shallow pools, the oaks dripping in
The storm
irregular
passed,
intervals long
and the
after the
sacking's done
clouds
its
have
job.
passed.
Let's see
He
how
walks
these
the
joints
site
have
in
set.
the early morning stillness,
They look good.
checking the covered
Solid.
joints, removing the sacking carefully to check what is beneath. The mortar has set. Not fully. Lime takes months, in truth, years to fully carbonate, but set enough. He is pleased in the contained way he has of being pleased. A look, a
Another
pause,
course done.
and then the
We're
decision
almost
to
above the
continue.
trees now.
He builds the South Tower through weeks 7 and 8.
Axle's
It
rating in the
rises
South
above the
Tower
level
is
of the
really
surrounding
taking
trees
shape.
by the end of the 7th
Looking at the
week.
original
4
planstone,
courses above
it's
the earlier
clear we've
work.
nailed level
the
5.
walls tapering slightly as they climb. The original plan scratched on limestone still propped against the inner face of the gatehouse, serving as his
All
guide.
right. First
He
diagonal.
builds the tower to square by laying
the
diagonals
second.
with a knotted rope, the medieval method,
They
checking
match.
that the 2 diagonal measurements of each course are equal before setting the next. The rope is marked at regular intervals with a charcoal line.
The beginning of the
He
corbelled
stretches
arch.
it,
The first
measures,
keystone will go here.
adjusts.
Yes, and the weight will
At the
shift to this
top
point.
of the South
Exactly.
Tower,
This
he
geometry
builds
must
the
be
first
precise.
corbelled arch. This is the most demanding work of the project, and he approaches it with the particular deliberateness he reserves for things that cannot be undone. He cuts each corbel stone, projecting blocks that lean progressively inward over the opening with care that borders on ceremony. Each block is shaped to transfer its load back into the wall rather than out across the void. He works through the geometry with a stick drawn through the clay ground at his feet, sketching angles and checking them, then redrawing when his eye disagrees. The arch is built from both sides simultaneously, advancing course by course toward the center, each corbel held in place by the weight of the ones above it rather than any temporary support. When the
The
two
final
sides
piece,
meet at the
perfectly
crown,
set.
a single capstone cut
Just need
to
a few
fit the
adjustments,
remaining
it's a
gap
tight fit.
exactly,
There.
set in mortar
Locked
and
in.
tapped carefully down with the mallet. The sound it makes is different from every other stone set in this project. A quieter, denser note, the sound of something completing rather than beginning. He stands on the scaffolding and looks at the finished arch for a long time. His hand rests on the capstone. He does not move it for perhaps a minute. The Great Hall
Keep it steady.
takes the remaining weeks
Down
of
a
the
little.
project. He raises the gable walls first,
Perfect.
continuing the courses
Set
of
it.
dressed limestone to the
Keep it
full
even.
height of the intended roofline,
Hold it
then
there.
sets the timber wall plates, the long beams that sit atop the masonry and carry the roof, bedding them in lime mortar and lashing them to iron dowels he has driven into the top course. The wall plate joints are scarfed, angled cuts interlocked so that the 2 sections of beam resist both tension and compression without any
first one's up.
fastening. The
Just need
timber's own
securing now.
geometry doing the
Nice
work.
work. Keep it
The
steady.
trusses go up one by one. He raises each one from the scaffolding,
Almost there.
setting the feet into the wall plates and holding the assembly upright with a
Solid.
temporary pole
Lock
shore
tight.
while he fixes the ridge connection at the apex. The joints are pegged with oak pins driven through pre-bored holes. He bores them with a brace and an auger bit, the bit making a low rhythmic grinding as it works through the grain of the green wood, producing tight spirals of pale shaving that fall to the planking below. When all 5 trusses are set and braced, he spends 2 days laying the roof boards, split oak again, and then the shakes, each course overlapping the last,
Let me see it.
each shake fixed with a single wooden peg. The first rain after the roof is finished falls overnight. In the morning, he walks into the great hall and stands in the dry interior while water runs from the eaves outside. The sound of rain on the oak shakes is low and even, a continuous soft percussion that fills the space and makes it feel enclosed in the way that a tent
Okay.
or a shelter
Needs to
cannot.
be flat.
He stands still
and worn.
and listens
Yes.
to it for a while.
This
Then
one,
he
this is the
begins
half stone.
fireplace. This is his addition. The original plan, scratched in limestone, shows no hearth in the Great Hall. Perhaps it was intended,
right, this is it.
perhaps not. He has decided
Just a
to
little
build one.
further.
He spends a morning choosing the hearthstone
Perfect.
from among the
Done.
limestone blocks he has quarried. A flat piece, roughly square, with a surface that has been naturally worn smooth by centuries of water flow.
All
He
right,
sets
12
it
degrees.
in the center of the north wall,
That's the one.
bedded on a course of rubble backfill.
The fireback rises from the hearthstone.
I've been doing this for
in a
years, but
slight
the firebacks
forward
need a
lean.
level of
The
precision
angle
that
is
other
important,
masonry just
perhaps
doesn't.
12
You have to
degrees
feel the
from
stone,
vertical,
dress the
enough to
face
reflect
smooth.
heat into the room and create the draw that will pull smoke up the flue. He cuts the fireback stones with particular care, their faces dressed to a smooth plane. The splays on either side open the fireplace to the room at an angle of 60 degrees, wider than it might seem necessary, but this is the geometry that works, that always worked, and he knows it the way he knows all of the proportions, not from study, but from the accumulated experience of standing inside enough buildings to understand what they are trying to do. He lights the first fire in a morning in late autumn. He lays it carefully, dry bark first, then small splits, then a few billets of the seasoned oak he brought specifically for this. He strikes his fire steel over a char cloth, blows the ember, nests it in a handful of dried grass, and touches it to the bark. The fire takes slowly,
there
building
it
with
goes.
quiet deliberateness.
Finds the draw nicely
The smoke,
now.
at first
Good.
hesitant, begins to move. It rises toward the opening of the flue, finds the draw, and goes up. The great hall fills briefly with the smell of the first fire in a new hearth, wood smoke and hot limestone dust, and something older, something that has to do with the stone releasing heat it has held for 8 centuries. And then the draw takes hold completely, and the air clears. He sits back on his heels and watches the fire. The flame finds its shape in about 10 minutes, the shape of a fire in a correctly built hearth, which is different from any other fire. Steadier, more upright, the heat pushing into the room rather than dispersing. The crackle settles into a low, continuous sound. The limestone of the fireback begins to warm, and as it warms, it ticks faintly, almost inaudibly, with the tiny expansions of the stone. He feeds the fire for an hour. Then he stands, moves to the doorway of the great hall, and looks out across the clearing. The south tower rises above the tree line. The gatehouse arch frames the track that disappears into the oaks. The walls of the great hall, the east range, the beginning of the north range, all of it stands in the low autumn light with the particular authority of stone. Not the authority of new things, but of things that have always been there and have simply been waiting to be recognized. An hour later, as the light changes to gold, a pair of jackdaws lands on the south tower
They're always the
parapet.
first to arrive, aren't they?
They stand for a moment, looking
They just
down
know when
at
the work is
clearing,
done.
at the fire smoke rising straight from the chimney stack, at the cleared ground, at the man standing in the doorway below, and then they settle. They tuck their heads. They are at home. He watches them for a long time. Then he turns, goes back inside, and adds another billet to the
Still
fire.
soft here.
The castle
Another week,
continues.
maybe?
There is more to build. He is
That
not
section
finished
needs
and does not
repointing,
appear
definitely.
to be in any hurry to be. He moves through the great hall, checking the mortar joints with his thumbnail, noting where the pointing will need touching up when the lime has cured another week. He runs his hand along the wall plate, checks the roof boarding through the open tie beam above, goes to the fireplace and adjusts the angle of a log with the toe of his boot. Outside, the oaks are almost bare. The last leaves come down in irregular spirals in the still afternoon air, and the castle walls catch them. Here at the base of the south tower, here along the east wall where the wind pools, and they rest there, copper and ochre, against the pale gray limestone, and they look as though they have always fallen there, as though this is what they were falling toward all along. The fire burns through the night. In the morning, the smoke is still rising straight.